Breakups can be brutal, and the dopamine your brain gets from fantasies that you and your ex are together again, oh, that can get incredibly addictive. Limerence is a form of romantic obsession, and for some of us, when life gets stressful or overwhelming, we use these limerent fantasies as an escape into a better reality. Limerence is kind of a disassociation. It's an escape into a surreal world, a mix between fact and fiction. Maybe all the people in this limerent daydream, they are real, but the relationship dynamics going on between them, they don't really line up and mirror what's going on in reality. Limerence can develop very early in life when you do not want to see the negativity going on in the relationships around you. When you are really young, limerence can be your survival mechanism. But as you get older and you take what they call this magical thinking along for the ride with you, it starts to become a coping mechanism. The limerent thoughts are just doing their best to protect you from sadness, especially after someone has left you. But at the same time, there are a couple of ways that limerence can cause big problems in our real life. Hello friends, my name is Maria, and there have been times in my life where my escape into my limerent fantasies became overwhelmingly harmful and addictive. In these fantasies, men who had left me suddenly became emotionally available to me. Our relationship troubles of the past faded away. They became the perfect partner and friend. Everyone was beautiful and everything glittered like gold. But if you're like me, and you're starting to feel like some time has passed, things are getting a little disproportionate, the fantasy is not adding up to the reality, and maybe not everything that glitters is gold, then grab a bottle of nail polish and let's talk. Some people say that limerence is the infatuation stage, like the honeymoon stage in the beginning of relationships. And because limerence involves a lot of seeing another person as perfect, I could see how there's something to that. But I believe that limerence can go much deeper and much darker and can keep you stuck on someone who cannot currently give you the things that you want. And I did have a commenter who made a very good point on my last video where I talked about limerence and romantic obsession, which I will go ahead and link down below. They said not every relationship deals with limerence, and I also believe that this is true. It is normal to think about someone a lot after a breakup. You miss them and you're sad, and sometimes you even get depressed. But limerence elongates your healing timeline to a disproportionate level. For example, you might be dealing with a limerent situation if you find yourself saying things like, man, we dated for 5 or 6 months. It's been almost 2 years. We barely even see each other in person. They're not treating me very well. Why can't I get over it? I don't believe that all of my breakups involved limerence. However, I was so personally devastated by the blindsiding breakup at the hands of my dismissive avoidant that my nervous system began pulling out all the stops in order to protect me from the horrible sadness of that breakup. And while I can appreciate my body loving me enough to try and protect me, I want to give you guys an example of how my limerent fantasies were fueling my anxious habit of continuing to reach out and text my dismissive avoidant ex month after month. So this particular instance was probably a little over a year after my avoidant had dumped me, and he was still doing this thing where he was giving me intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes when I texted him, he would answer me. Sometimes when I texted him, he would be very monotone, but sometimes he acted like he was happy to hear from me. And sometimes when I texted him, he would completely ignore me. Now, The times when I reached out and he would ignore me, it felt like my nervous system caught on fire, and I began to calm myself down through escaping into a limerent fantasy. In this fantasy, we both looked beautiful. We would come together, and it would always start out where he took my hands and looked into my eyes and apologized for the way that he had been treating me. I mean, how foolish he had been. Of course, we're meant to be together. And then we would both get into a hot air balloon and go drifting over a glittering mountainscape. And I live in Florida, by the way, so yeah, this was definitely a fantasy. Well, this fantasy would calm me down and pacify me, but here was the main problem. The more I pictured him in this loving daydream, the more I remembered how he was in the good times. And it kind of scooted the reality under the rug, the reality where he kicked me in the teeth and completely abandoned our relationship. Well, there was one night where I got so lost in this limerent fantasy that I grabbed my phone and texted him and asked him if he would ever consider taking a hot air balloon ride. He completely ignored the text, and I came crashing back into the reality that he did not value my presence in his life, and he did not care about my feelings. Ugh, it ruined my entire weekend. I let his silence eat me alive for about 4 days until I couldn't take it anymore. And instead of sitting down and performing an act of self-care, like, I don't know, painting my nails, I sat down and began to hyper-focus and try to analyze why this man had not texted me back. So, in an attempt to get a response from him to calm myself down, I reached out and texted him the words, "Are you okay?" I should have been asking myself that question, by the way. And he came back to me right away. He was like, yeah, of course. Because of course he was okay. He was fine. So I was like, oh, okay, because I was just wondering because I didn't hear back from you. And this is the whole reason I have this channel, to try to help you guys, because this is going to be the behavior. When you look back, you're going to cringe. You're not going to be okay with it. You're just going to realize that you deserved so much better from a partner and from yourself. He was like, yeah, I just didn't feel like talking to anyone this weekend. Well, let me tell you, because we had a couple of mutual friends and through the power of social media, I knew that he had gone to 2 different social events that weekend. So it is not that he didn't feel like talking to anyone that weekend. He just didn't feel like talking to me. He chose to ignore me. And then for whatever reason, the 4 days later, when I texted him and asked him if he was okay, he chose to answer me back. This is a toxic, addictive cycle. This is why in every single one of my videos, I encourage you to never remain involved with anyone who feels like they can choose what day you exist. You exist all the time. Plus, the intermittent reinforcement just becomes this mystery challenge, and it became a way for me to cope with the stress of the breakup, focusing on trying to figure him out. Like, he told me he loved me, and no one who loves you would act like this, so it can't be that he doesn't love me, right? There must be an explanation for why he's behaving this way towards me. Look, the only thing that focusing on him ever did, it didn't help him, and it didn't help me either. We don't even talk anymore. All it did was burn up more of my time, and I can't tell you how much I wish that instead of sitting around Googling why his attachment style was causing him to treat me like crap, I wish I'd sat down and painted my nails and got on with my own healing. The reality is, it does not matter why the relationship isn't the same anymore. Because if it is eroding you as a person, then these limerent fantasies about how things used to be and staying in denial about the shift in the relationship and staying in denial that this person in reality is treating you like garbage, it's only going to just put off the real happiness that you can realistically have in your own life. I wish that when my ex decided that he wasn't going to talk to me, that I could have taken it for what it was, that he didn't want to talk to me. And I know with avoidance that that's hard, because I know because of their attachment style and things that you hear online, they do tell us that this person does love us. They just have a very hard time expressing it, and they always want to keep us at an arm's length. But I can promise you, as someone who has gotten through a breakup with a dismissive avoidant and seen that there are better relationships out there, I cannot tell you how much I wish I had never texted him ever again. I misguidedly thought that continuing to talk to him was what was making me feel better. But the person who has hurt you is not your solution, especially if they're being abusive. If you're a victim to someone who is abusing you, your abuser is not your healer. I know that you might be struggling with loneliness, but trying to force relationships with people who are treating you this way and acting like this, it's not going to solve the loneliness problem. And that's why it is paramount that you can learn to sit with yourself and be alone, but not feel loneliness. And if it's been a while since you have been alone, or you don't feel like you can sit alone with yourself, just know that once you let go of this relationship, there is going to be a period of withdrawal, and there are going to be times where things in your life feel empty. You feel the emptiness that thinking about this person and focusing on them, that's all space that they used to occupy. I was always someone who had a very hard time sitting with myself in the empty space that someone else who dumped me used to occupy. And the way that I would choose to fill in this space was I would get all up in my own head, and I would start to look to other people and send text messages out for little hits of validation, inappropriate people like maybe other exes or other guys to give me what I just needed in that moment, that hit that I was looking for, just so I could live with myself that day. It's like looking to other people just to get permission to exist in this life. And a lot of times you do things like this because the person who you love is treating you like you're pretty non-existent. So after almost 20 years of repeating these relationship patterns over and over and over again, I had had enough, and I finally made the choice to do something different. No more sitting around waiting for other people to choose me. I chose myself instead, and I sat down very quietly at my kitchen table, and I began to fill in the space every day by just living in my reality, alone with myself, and painting my nails. It was a way for me to show myself that I was making a commitment to care about myself, but simultaneously, when your nails are wet, you can't do things like text your ex. And later on in the day, if I was feeling overwhelmed by maybe loneliness or anxiety, and I went to text my ex, I would look down and I would see my beautiful painted nails, and it would remind me, no, you love yourself too much to make this choice. And bonus, my nails looked pretty good, but welcome to the other half, where we know attraction is not just about looks. We also have to take care of the inner half. Because if we cannot sit with ourselves, then we become targets for other people who use people for their own hits of validation. They'll use you to get their emotional needs met, but they'll do it in a very selfish way that will destroy how you see yourself. And if you're a guy and you don't particularly feel like painting your nails, another little trick I learned was right here. You can write the letters ESC for emotional self-control. So when you go to text your ex, it's almost like the abbreviation for escape. Get out of there now. Don't do this. And ask yourself, is texting your ex even really about them? Or are you trying to make yourself feel better? Now, there were definitely times where I reached out and texted my ex because I did love him. You know, these are people that you get used to talking to every day. You share your life with them. And there were times where I'd see something funny or something good or something bad would happen. And I would reach out because they did become the person that, I was used to talking to them. And I wanted to tell them things. I really missed them. But there were those times where I felt like I really needed that validation from them, and I didn't. And I kind of can't believe there was a time where I ever felt like I did. You probably won't even realize how much of your lifespan and energy this person is sucking out of you until you make the commitment to let go. And I don't mean let go for 3 months and then text them again. I mean really let go. You surrender to the notion that you cannot control people, and you release them and you let the chips fall where they may. And life is unpredictable. You know, I've let people go. I let a friend go once. She was pulling away, and I did send her a text at one point, and she kind of blew me off, and I just let her go. And a couple of months later, she came back into my life, and now we're closer than ever. There have been exes that have come back to me once I let them go, but there's also been people that I have let go and they've never come back. But I'm okay with that, because over time you learn that if the only way a relationship works is you have to fantasize about them treating you a different way, and in reality the way that they're treating you makes you feel bad about yourself, that is no option. If you can mentally prepare yourself that when you stop focusing on this other person and you make yourself the goal and you make a commitment to move forward, that there is going to be a space there. You know, sometimes when we're prepared for something, it makes it easier to get through it. I'm here to tell you that after you get over that initial fear, you're going to feel so much better. So talk to yourself like you're being a friend to yourself, and just let you know that there are going to be times where you're going to feel the emptiness. And just know that it's going to be okay. Because as time passes and you really look around at yourself and maybe your environment, the other relationships you have, you know, there's a lot that you can fill up that space with. Self-improvement is just a never-ending adventure. And it's actually one of the best space fillers I've ever personally found. If you're having a hard time being happy, living in your own world, then there's plenty of things that you can do in order to change it. And I'm not talking about these big grand gestures where people move, or, you know, they move across the country, or they change careers, they change their whole, listen, after a breakup, a lot of times we don't have that much energy. And that's why in my videos, I encourage you to start with very small things. And it's these small things that are going to stack on top of each other. And before you know it, you have created a life that you just simply enjoy throughout your day. Like, for example, at my house, in my kitchen, I have a little coffee corner that I've made, really cute for myself. And I really enjoy being in that corner while I'm drinking my coffee. And in another room, I have a space that I've built up to where I really enjoy sitting down and writing these videos for you. And all it takes is starting with creating tiny little areas that begin to build a world that you enjoy simply bopping around in. A world that you don't feel like you need an escape from. You deserve a reality where people who ditch you, they don't look so good. And remember that not everything that glitters is gold. People who are too lame to text you back, they're the ones who lilac luster. If this video helped you, so will this one. My name is Maria Adriana. You did not have to live my life, but I certainly hope you can learn from it. As always, thank you for visiting The Other Half.